A speaker who did it his way.
I don't require any help from a member on the third row, thinks he's got some role to play in these matters, got absolutely no contribution to make whatsoever.
On a long and colourful political journey.
I'm not interested in signing up to a policy that puts Europe before Britain.
Dispensing advice along the way.
Calm yourself, man. Take some sort of soothing medicament from which...
To his supporters, John Bercows has been one of the great speakers, a transformative figure in the stuffy world of Westminster. To his critics, he was pompous, biased even, changing the rules to suit his own agenda. But the decisions he took in this chair over 10 years may have changed the course of history, and his distinctive style made him an unlikely international celebrity.
You landed at Schiphol this evening. People were yelling order at you and asking you to take selfies.
Yes.
This must be a new experience.
It is a new experience.
Years before his became a familiar face on our screens, John Bercows made his debut on children's TV alongside Ed Stewart Stewart.
Anyway, it's time for the boys' game now, and let's meet the lads. There's John over there, Philip.
And yes, he did go home with a crackerjack pencil and pen. John Bercows' first question time came on BBC TV in 1981, when the future speaker was only just old enough to vote.
Young gentleman there, please.
Yes. For Mrs. Castle to describe what Mr. Whitelaw said about financial assistance as economic nonsense really is utterly absurd. Mrs. Castle recalls in her recent book that Mr. Callaghan once said that if he were a young man, he would emigrate because he didn't have any of the answers to Britain's economic or any other problems. I would suggest to Mrs. Castle that the reason she sought to join the European Parliament was precisely the same. Mr. Mr. Whitelaw was talking economic common sense.
Hold on. You made very good points. We don't want to forget them.
I may be an old-fashioned 21-year-old conference, but I make no apology for saying that the government should not rest until the inflationary disease has been expunged from the British economy once and for all. The only tolerable level of inflation is zero inflation.
The young Bercows was a leading figure in the anti-immigration Monday Club on the far right of the Conservative Party, and a crowd-pleasing party conference activist.
Smaller public sector, an end to punitive taxation and the release of our industry from cumbersome political control, the results of failure in the form of the socialist nightmare hardly bear reflection.
By 1992, he was on the election trail, fighting and losing a Labour-held seat in Bristol. He was to travel a long way politically, but even after being elected MP for Buckingham in 1997, he continued to fly the flag for Euroscepticism.
Good afternoon to John Bercows MP. He's a Tory Eurosceptic and proud of it.
Make no mistake, if we join the single currency, it will almost certainly fail economically. It is absolute nonsense for Britain to sign up to a policy made by people in Frankfurt whom we do not elect and whom we cannot remove.
His views and his crockery have changed since his days as an ambitious opposition MP. Marriage to Sally Illman, a Labour activist, coincided with his own political journey. Having been swiftly promoted to the shadow cabinet, he resigned to rebel against the party line on gay adoption.
You're far too young.
As the front bench door closed, another opened for someone increasingly semi-detached from his party. Traditionally, openly campaigning to be Speaker was not done, but in 2009, John Bercows ran a well-organised, professional and successful campaign.
The Speaker should always be neutral within this chamber, but he or she should not be neutral about this chamber. If elected, I would be a tireless advocate for our political relevance. So finally, I turn to the world beyond Westminster. A reforming Speaker needs to become both an advocate and an ambassador for Parliament. He must reconnect it with the society which it seeks to represent. I would be comfortable to be both a speaker and a listener.
John Bercows, 322. Yes. Sir George Young, 271.
MPs had been listening, and John Bercows was elected on the third ballot. Few Tory MPs voted for him, but most joined in the applause as he was dragged to the Speaker's chair. a tradition dating back to the days when a Speaker would have to communicate MPs' views to the monarch, which could be a life-shortening challenge. The new Speaker broke with tradition by abandoning the court dress worn by his predecessors. In its place, a business suit and simple gown.
March on our way.
A visual signal of his reforming intentions. Even the clerks who advised him dispensed with their wigs. John Bercow changed the way the Commons works. Emergency debates became routine. Erskine May, the definitive guide to parliamentary procedure, is now 184 pages longer than it used to be. Under his predecessor, MPs could ask urgent questions a few times a year. With Speaker Bercow in the chair, ministers would be summoned to this dispatch box a few times a week.
Urgent question, Chris Law. Urgent question, Mr. Dominic Grieve. Urgent question, Diane Abbott.
MPs were given more chances to question each of the 4 prime ministers of the Bercow years. PMQs now came with added Bercow time, routinely lasting almost twice as long as its allotted 30 minutes. David Cameron said he wondered on waking what John Bercow would do to make his life hell today.
Order, I haven't finished. Order. In response to that question, the Prime Minister has finished, and he can take it from me that he's finished. Dr. Liam Fox!
The Bercow modernising influence has been felt outside the chamber too.
Well done, you children. We've got children from the House of Commons nursery here. I must say that I celebrate the House of Commons nursery, and you won't be entirely surprised to know that I celebrate it partly because, to be honest, I don't wish to be immodest. It was my idea that we should establish this nursery.
John Bercow would like to be remembered as the backbencher's Speaker.
I think I made the immortal statement that I think you annoy members on all front benches from time to time, which is probably a testament to your even-handedness. And I think there was not a dry eye in the House because that was true.
You've taken absolutely on board the words of Speaker Lenthal, that you're there to be guided and act on behalf of our Parliament. This Parliament is the stronger for your being Speaker. Our democracy is the stronger for your being the Speaker. And whatever you do when you finally step down from Parliament, you do so with the thanks of a very large number of people.
It is the case, however controversial the role of a backstop may be in other areas, your role as the backbencher's backstop has certainly been one that's been appreciated by individuals across this House.
Not an appreciation universally shared in government.
Give them an indication, won't you?
Order! The Government Chief Whip has absolutely no business whatsoever shouting from a sedentary position. Order! The Honourable Gentleman will remain in the chamber. The Honourable Gentleman, the Right Honourable Gentleman, has absolutely no business scurrying out of the chamber. Order! The Right Honourable... Order! Order! The Chief Whip has absolutely no business... Order! Order! The Right Honourable Gentleman has no business behaving in that way.
Ministers had lost patience a long time ago. In 2015, they tried to change the rules for electing the Speaker. The attempted coup failed, to the relief of an emotional John Bercow.
Order! Order! The ayes to the right, 202. The noes to the left, 228. Yeah!
John Bercow came to the chair promising a clean break with the past, but there were scandals on his watch too.
Colleagues, I wish to make a statement about recent
disturbing allegations about a culture of sexual harassment at Westminster between members and those who work for members. Let me make it clear. There must be zero tolerance of sexual harassment or bullying here at Westminster or elsewhere.
Some of the bullying allegations were close to home.
I think our problem was that he would not communicate. It was as if we had to best guess what he wanted, and that will always lead to mistakes. And this happened a number of times, and it seemed to be more frequent. And the Speaker responded in a way that I can only say is a form of bullying, and that is to show anger, to thump the table, to say that somebody has failed in front of others.
Claims robustly denied by John Bercow.
I have a superb team of dedicated, effective and long-serving staff, 5 of whom have served me for a collective total of over 40 years. I'm also happy to confirm that the great majority of people who have left my service have done so on perfectly amicable terms.
But some senior MPs wanted more action after the publication of a report by the retired High Court judge, Dame Laura Cox.
Taunting, mocking, mimicking, deliberately belittling in front of other members, making offensive personal comments about appearance, belittling someone's junior status, making lengthy and humiliating tirades of criticism of abuse in front of colleagues. How can we encourage Mr. Speaker to stop this behaviour?
The report is clear that there needs to be a complete change in leadership at the most senior level, including you, Mr. Speaker.
I've spoken very publicly about being bullied for 7 years as a teenager. 2 nervous breakdowns, 1 episode of hospitalisation through bullying. So I say this without any partisan point, but I find it abhorrent, and it has been members opposite who have used this for their own agenda, using bullying to bully the Speaker.
2016, and Britain votes to leave the European Union.
Well, at 20 minutes to 5, we can now say the decision taken in 1975 by this country to join the common market has been reversed by this referendum to leave the EU.
The consequences of that vote have dominated Parliament ever since, with its referee becoming a key player. As we've seen, John Bercow was once a proud Eurosceptic, but in the 2016 referendum he voted Remain and, crucially, let people know about it. His handling of Brexit legislation, allowing backbench MPs to take over the Commons agenda, infuriated ministers and Brexiteers. For some, this was confirmation that the Speaker was no longer impartial.
For many of us, we will now have an unshakable conviction that the referee of our affairs, not least that you gave your opinion and your vote on the issue of Brexit publicly, that we will have an unshakable conviction that the referee is no longer neutral.
I have always been scrupulously fair to Brexiteers and Remainers alike, as I have always been to people of different opinions on a miscellany of other issues. That has been the case, it is the case, it will continue to be the case.
Newspapers discovered a bollocks to Brexit sticker on a Bercow family car.
We've all noticed in recent months a sticker in your car making derogatory comments about Brexit. No, this is a serious point about partiality. Have you driven that car with the sticker there?
That sticker on the subject of Brexit happens to be affixed to or in the windscreen of my wife's car. Yes. And I'm sure the honourable gentleman wouldn't suggest for one moment that a wife is somehow the property or chattel of her husband. She is entitled to her views, That sticker is not mine, and that's the end of it.
But it wasn't the end of the argument over John Bercows' approach to Brexit.
The ayes to the right, 202. The noes to the left, 432.
As government defeats began to mount for Theresa May, ministers accused the referee of changing the rules to make it harder for MPs to back her Brexit deal.
The issue is that the role of the chair is to uphold the rules that Parliament has made for itself, not to arbitrarily change those rules.
There was nothing arbitrary about the conduct of the chair yesterday. This Speaker is well aware of how to go about the business of chairing the proceedings of the House, because he's been doing so for 9.5 years. And I hope colleagues will understand when I say that I require no lessons or lectures from others about how to discharge my obligations to Parliament and in support of the rights of backbench parliamentarians.
A change of Prime Minister and a new Brexit deal didn't change John Bercows' approach.
Today's circumstances are in substance the same as Saturday's circumstances. My ruling is therefore that the motion will not be debated today, as it would be repetitive and disorderly to do so.
Can you understand, sir, in the light of your comments, why some people perceive, perhaps incorrectly, that the only consistency one can find in your rulings is that they always seem to favour one side of the argument and never the government, who are trying their best to carry out the mandate given to them by the British people in 2016?
I note the dilemmas you face mean that on occasion you will sometimes have to please some and not others, but it is becoming remarkable how often you please one lot and not the other lot.
When he was getting the decisions in his favour, he wasn't grumbling. He's grumbling now because he doesn't like the judgment. But the judgment I've made is an honourable and fair one, and I'm afraid if the honourable gentleman doesn't like it, there's not much I can do about that.
John Bercow has a way with words. Of that, as he might put it, we can brook of no contradiction. Some MPs were said to play Bercow bingo, ticking off favourite words from the Speaker's phrasebook. Eyes down.
Anybody who understands the Constitution knows that Her Majesty had no discretion. There was no question of dragging her into it, and it is the honourable gentleman opposite, using your favourite word, Mr. Speaker, who are chuntering away merrily, who simply ought to go back to school and learn about the Constitution. A ladybird book can be provided.
Well, it's not for me to say, and it wasn't evident to me whether the activity was being undertaken merrily, but I can certainly confirm that there was chuntering from a sedentary position. And I may say, of course, that the expression chuntering from a sedentary position is very commonplace in the work of the House, but I have noticed in my travels to parliaments around the world that it is a source of regular comment and no little amusement.
Order! Order! I've noticed earlier, Mr. Mahmood, that you seem to be in a very hyper condition today. I would recommend you take some sort of soothing medicament or go and lie down for a little while. You'll probably feel better at the end of it. Mr. Russell Moyle, you are an incorrigible individual. Yelling from a sedentary position at the top of your voice at every turn. Calm yourself, man. Take some sort of soothing medicament from which you will benefit. Mr. Jeremy Corbyn!
Some detected a Jane Austen influence in the Bercow vocabulary.
Could the Speaker tell us what he's talking about when he talks about a blind motion?
Well, I don't think that what I would call motion exegesis is a matter for the chair. I think it is for the Secretary of State to explain the terms of his motion. I am saddened if the honourable gentleman is befuddled, and I wouldn't want him to remain in a state of nescience for any length of time. So I hope the Secretary of State will elaborate, and then clarity will descend upon the honourable gentleman and all the people of Huddersfield.
Yeah.
Order! Order. Resume your seat. Resume your seat, Mr. Order. Resume your seat. I don't require any lectures in democracy from the honourable gentleman. I will advise the honourable gentleman of precisely what the position is, and it will brook of no contradiction.
His unique approach extended to impressions of parliamentarians past and present.
As somebody, a very long-serving member of this House once said, sadly no longer with us, it's not about policies, it's about policies, it's not about personalities. It's not about personalities, it's about policies. I have made the point often, and forgive me, but I make it again, that I tend to subscribe to the dictum of the late Lord Whitelaw in these matters. He famously used to say, personally, I think it is better to cross bridges only when I come to them. Bone! I call Sir John Hayes. Mr. Kenneth Clarke.
It won't be the same without him. John Bercow announced his departure days after the Conservatives said they'd defy convention and put a candidate up against him at the next election.
At the 2017 election, I promised my wife and children that it would be my last. This is a pledge that I intend to keep.
He made a valedictory statement to MPs.
I have sought to increase the relative authority of this legislature, for which I will make absolutely no apology to anyone.
Within hours, he became the figurehead of opposition to the government's attempt, later ruled unlawful, to prorogue or suspend Parliament for 5 weeks, amid extraordinary scenes at 1:20 in the morning.
This is not a standard or normal prorogation. It is... I don't require any assistance from you, Mr. Stevenson. You wouldn't have the foggiest idea where to start in seeking to counsel me on this important... I require no response from you. I require no response from you. I require no response from you, young man. I require no response from you. Get out, man. You will not be missed. Please do your job. I had already made the point if people had the manners to listen, which they haven't, that I will play my part. This is not, however, a normal prorogation. It is not typical. It is not standard. It's one of the longest for decades, and it represents, not just in the minds of many colleagues, but huge numbers of people outside, an act of executive fiat. I completely understand why very large numbers of members are much more comfortable staying where they are. Mr. Stewart, if you don't like it, you're perfectly entitled to your view. I couldn't give a flying flamingo what your view is. Thank you very much indeed.
MPs who followed the Speaker to the Lords were booed. Two weeks later, they were back after the Supreme Court agreed with the Speaker, who seemed even more emboldened by his impending departure.
Colleagues, welcome back to our place of work.
Welcome back, if not for long. The break didn't appear to have calmed things.
Calm yourself, man. Oh, I'm very concerned for you.
Well, briefly to animadvert to a possible amendment is orderly, but to dilate upon it is not. I'm telling the honourable gentleman what the position is. Don't mix it with the chair. And I'm on my last day, and he's given me my cue. The best thing about Switzerland is not its skiing, it's not its chocolate, it's not its watches, it's not its financial services. The best thing about Switzerland is Roger Federer. I want to thank my wife, Sally, and our 3 children, Oliver, Freddie, and Jemima, for the support, stoicism, and fortitude which they've displayed through thick and thin over the last decade. I'll never forget it, and I'll always be grateful for it.
And those were the Bercow years. Contentious, polarising, modernising, certainly not dull. He was never going to go quietly, but as he heads for the international chat show circuit, perhaps he too will discover the merits of a soothing medicament.
Order, order.